Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. I do truly appreciate it. And today I want to do another one of those firsts for me. And that's what they call, those people in the booktube land, they call the reading wrap up. And I'm going to do a reading wrap up for the month of March. And I don't know if honesty is best, but honesty. There's no way in heck I read 10, 20 books, 50, 80, 100 books in a month. On good months, I might get 7 or 8 good months. But typically, if I can get 4 solid, full-size novels in a month, I'm pretty pleased. I'm happy with the way that went along. So, yeah, there you go. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. When I read Stephen King's It a few months ago, well, I didn't get 4 books in on that month. Anyway, that's just the way it goes for me. And so I want to talk a little bit about the books I read in the month of March. Some great ones. One that I honestly wished I didn't read. And some other ones that were really, really good. So turns out all in all it was good. But I think I read what I might consider the lowest rated, as far as how I rate on a scale of 1 to 5, book that I've ever read. And I'll tell you what that one was. But first off, I read a book by Pierre Boulle called Planet of the Apes. Ever hear of it? And this is a book that I'd been wanting to read for a long time, and I've put it off and put it off and put it off. It was originally written in French. Pierre Boulle might give away that, but it translated into English. And I read this book really not knowing what I was getting into, other than pretty popular book. There's also The Bridge on the River Kwai, which I need to read. Which the movie The Bridge Over the River Kwai was based upon. And I love that movie too. And I love the Charlton Heston movie, 1968. One of my favorite movies of all time. I've got a lot of favorite movies. But my oldest son, he's 14, and he says it's his favorite movie. So going into it, I was really excited. And the book really delivered. Different, very different than that movie. Very different than the Marky Mark movie, and very different than the newest set of movies that are still going on, it seems, as well. Better, I say in many ways it is better than the Charlton Heston 1968 Planet of the Apes. And some of the ways that it was better, they just couldn't put into a movie. But I really like this book. 5 stars. 5 stars out of 5 stars for me. And I strongly recommend it to anyone. There are multiple twists at the end. And part of the twist is being a fan of the movie. I thought I knew what was going to happen, and it didn't happen. Something else did. It turned out different than what I was expecting. And then again, another little added twist at the end. So I really like this one. Strong recommend to anybody who likes to read good books with an open mind, whether you like a genre or not. That's one of the things I've found. I've been closed-minded as a reader for a long time. Certain things, I just don't want to read it because I don't read that kind of stuff. I've seen the movie. I love the movie, so I read the book. And that really has hurt me. It's held me back. It stopped me from reading some amazing books. And this is an example of that. Also, maybe you don't like certain genres. You don't like books from certain eras. You didn't like the movie because it was made in this time period. So you don't want to read the book. I say open up, read it, give it a shot. You'll love it. Phenomenal book and a strong recommend for me. Now, the second one hurts. I don't like saying bad things about stuff. I feel like insults, just by saying I don't like something, I feel like it's an insult. And I'm sure some of you may be insulted just because I say I don't like this book. And honestly, the problem is I can't just say I don't like this book. I gotta say I really don't like this book. I wish I didn't read it. And that is, I'm sorry. I really wanted to. I bought the limited edition. It sat on my shelf. I talked about how great the artwork was. I watched interviews with the author. I really thought, man, this lady is cool. I really want to read this book. And I read this book, and I honestly was happier before I did. Because I had a cool limited edition book sitting on the shelf, and I could tell myself the book was great. Like Schrodinger's Cat, I don't know, somehow that fits in there. But I could tell myself, as long as I hadn't read it, I could tell myself, yeah, I got that book on the shelf. Looks good. Great. Happy about it. And I read the book, and that book's not on the shelf anymore. I'm not happy about it. I didn't like it. And honestly, the book for me started off okay. You got some characters that are really kind of down and out B-side of life sort of a thing, as Rocky described it in Rocky 5 on the B-side. Or was that Rocky 3? Can't remember. You tell me. But anyway, they're talking about the hole. They're doing these things in the hole. You get their life at the video store and the bar and stuff, and their weird relationship and weird dynamic, and how they're both very unhappy people. And okay, I started to get into a little bit. And then I just got to a point where it felt like I was reading about people laying around in a basement and people trying to get in. And more about people laying around in a basement and people trying to get in. And I felt like that's all I was reading. And I just could not wait for it to be over. And then when it was over, I was hoping they're going to give me something that I can read the end and it'll be like, wow, okay. Pulled it out, one came back, hulked up. And when it was over, I really honestly felt like, ugh. The only positive I could say was I was glad it was over. But so many people love this book, I just don't get it. Something's wrong with me. I'm going to tell you now, it's me. It's not you. It's me. I don't get it. I didn't get it. It didn't work for me at all. And I gave this one 2 out of 5 stars. I'm not telling you don't go out and read it. I'm not telling you that you're wrong if you think it's great, if you love it. I'm not telling you any of that stuff. It didn't work for me. I didn't like it at all. And I sold the Centipede Press limited edition, hopefully to somebody that loves it, that thinks it's a great book, that thinks that they're glad to have this on their shelf. And they're right. Hopefully they feel that way. And they're right, because it's their book. It's their opinion. Mine is pointless, useless, means nothing to anybody but me. Anyway, now that's the painful part that I most dreaded. And again, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I really am. I don't like saying bad things. There's people on these video scope things that get on here and they want to tell you the bad things. They want to piss people off. They want to find ways to stick it to you. And I hate that. I don't like it. I want to talk about the good stuff, especially reading, because I read because I enjoy reading. I do videos because I kind of want to talk about the crap that I'm reading or the crap that I'm collecting and adding to my shelves. Nobody in my house gets excited when I add a new book to the collection. Nobody in my house gets excited when I say, hey, I finished the book today. It was great. Nobody. Nothing against them. But anyway, that's why I do these videos. I do them for me. And hopefully if somebody likes it, well, shoot, that makes a man feel good. Anyway, the next book that I read pulled the nose up on the month of March, just like that. Rocket going into space, like the Planet of the Apes. No rockets in The Godfather. This is a book, just like the Planet of the Apes, that I really probably didn't want to read just because I'm an idiot. I saw the movie. And while the movie is a great movie, I'm not a big fan of it. Like, it's a great movie. I really liked it. But when you say The Godfather, I don't say, oh yeah, I love that movie. Yeah, I don't. It's not that kind of excitement for me. Great movie. That's good enough for me. And I had no interest in reading the book, especially when a lot of people said, hey, the book's a lot like the movie. But as it turns out, even though the book and the movie are a lot alike, and there's other books like that, The Exorcist is a fine example of a book and a movie that are so much alike. But reading that book was a pleasure. Reading that book made me love that movie so much more. That book is now one of my favorite books that I've ever read. The Godfather, exactly the same thing. When I read this book, actually not even when I read this book, when I started, when I'm something like here, I'm thinking this might be one of the greatest books I've ever read. And then when I get to here and when I finally go, set it down and say, wow, one of the greatest books I've ever read. I love The Godfather by Mario Puzo. I'll say Puzo because Puzo doesn't seem to flow. Maybe I've been saying Puzo for way too many decades. Mario Puzo, sorry. I don't mean to say it wrong. Just feels more correct to say Puzo. Did a fabulous job here. I want more. So I've got to go back. I've got to read the Sicilian at the very least. I want more. I read The Godfather. And every character in this book is better in this book than they are in the movie. Many of the smaller characters in the movie that played a part but really had no ending to their story, they get an ending to their story in this book. There are many story arcs, storylines, things in here, many characters that you get to see them play out. You get to see how things work out for them, and that makes it great for me. But again, I understand the characters' motivations, their understanding, their worries, their concerns, their relationships. I get to understand them far better in the book. And this is another one. Strong recommend. Strong. Even if you're not interested in the mafia stories, even if you're not interested in the time period, I recommend this book. You got to set some of those prejudices aside. Read this book. Absolutely phenomenal. It's one. There's no way, if I live long enough, there's no way I'll be able to go through life without reading this book again. It's that good. One of my all-time favorites, but I got a lot of favorites. So this month I read 6 books. One of them doesn't really qualify as little, but this one is a book, Antimatter Blues by Edward Ashton. And you can see I bought a cheap library copy because I like to read the most economically priced versions of books that I can get my hands on typically. And so this one is a sequel to Mickey 7, which I did a review on. I loved Mickey 7. I didn't know what to expect when I read that book. I had watched a couple of positive YouTube videos, one in particular, which said it was a great book. In fact, that lady didn't like this one as much. But I loved that book a lot, and I was excited to read Antimatter Blues. And I didn't like it as much as Mickey 7, but I did like it. Right up front, what do they call that? The reductive rating, 4 out of 5. I rated Mickey 7 5 out of 5. This one a little bit less. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. But typically, sophomore books for me are more of a pleasure because you already know the characters, you already know the backstory, you know where you're at. Now you just get to start right off. And this book starts right off. You're 2 years after Mickey 7, after that book ended. 2 years later, you're here. And guess what? What seemed like was going to work out great, worked out great until something happened. And things ain't working out so great after all. It's all going to come to an end if our boy Mickey 7 and his band of friends don't come through. And man, it sounds great. It sounds great. And it ends up being great. Overall, 4 out of 5 for me is a book that I really, really like. There's a lot of 4 books that I really liked, but it's not that greatest favorite sort of a thing for me. And I'll say why. Because the book starts off great, just like I would expect it to start off, and it ends great. I won't tell you what that means, but I like the way it starts, I like the way it ends. But a bulk of the book is just them traveling somewhere. And I don't want to insult anybody. Edward Ashton, I'm sure you have no interest in my opinion at all. But it feels like this book would have been a novella, but it was turned into a novel. It feels like there's a lot in the middle, which would have been like this, and it was expanded out like that. And I felt that. I felt it when I was reading. When I feel it when I'm reading, then I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but when I feel it, for me, it's real. Perception is reality in that case for a reader. It feels like this is just dragging on and on and on. Let's just get there already. And that's why I say this book isn't as good, just because of that section in the middle when I'm just trying to get there. Just get there already. Just get there already. But when they got there, it was awesome. So they pull up the nose. The book comes out. Excellent. There's a lot of books out there that I love that pulled up the nose and gave me something great at the end. And I'll always remember them for that. To me, that's an interesting ride too. It's like a psychology of a book. So some books, they might bring you up, they bring you down, so they can bring you back up again to an ultimate finish. And I guess, psychologically speaking, this is one of those books. That's a story right there. Bring you up, bring you down, then bring you back up again. It's like a ride. So Antimatter Blues is truly the ride. Anyway, 4 out of 5. Glad I read it. He writes a sequel. I'm reading it just as quickly as I can because I dig it. I dig the characters. I dig what they've gotten themselves into. And I want more. I want more. That's a series that I could read for a while. I typically don't read series 20, 30 books in, but you give me 10, 15 books, that I really dig, and I usually will stick out for that ride. All right, the next one that I read, that I say book, because it's really a short story. This is one of the Mysterious Bookshop's Biblio Mysteries, and they are basically books about books, give or take. I mean, there's some working area in there. So Joe Lansdale did a book about a bookmobile. So, but ultimately, the theory is books about books. And they've got some really good ones. And I've had this one on the shelf for years because I'm an F. Paul Wilson fan. He's one of my very favorite authors. Big fan of F. Paul Wilson. Never read an F. Paul Wilson book that I didn't like. I just never read the Compendium of Shrim. And by the way, this one is a signed limited edition. It's numbered out of series. So there were how many? There were 100 numbered copies, and then they made some extras, and this was one of the extras, out of series, but cool, good, glad to have it. And the Compendium of Shrim, if you're an F. Paul Wilson reader and a Repairman Jack reader, there is a book, a Repairman Jack book called what's it called? Hang on, stay right there, don't go anywhere. It's called Infernal, and I've got some cool copies of that book, but in there is this thing called the Lilitung of Gefreda, and it is one of these infernals. And Repairman Jack has to get this book called the Compendium of Shrim, and they use that book to help figure out how to reverse a curse for a very important little girl to them, and others. But the book is mentioned there. A little bit of the backstory, and then it's gone. And the book again comes up later on in the series as something very important to help save the world as we know it. Well, for the Mysterious Bookshop and the Biblio Mysteries, F. Paul Wilson chipped in and said, hey, I've written books about a book, so let me now write a book just about the book. And so it was cool. It was neat to get a little time period of this book's history. It's not the beginning. It's not the end, just before. It's a cool time period where this book had an interesting road, or interesting stop in its road to the ultimate Repairman Jack stuff over there. But it was neat. Glad to read it. It was pretty short. I give this one 4 out of 5 stars. It didn't really have a character that I wanted to follow, that I really cared about. It had characters. They were good characters. And there was a twist, which really was nice. I'd like to hear more about that part of it after fact. I'd like to hear more, read more of that stuff. So most of the book, you're reading about some characters. It's like, okay, the main point is the book and finding out what the deal is with the book. But in the end, you find out that one of these characters has been throughout. Kind of interesting. I'd like more. F. Paul Wilson. I'd like more. Anyway, I give this one 4 out of 5. I liked it. I liked it a lot. Glad to have it in my collection. And then to round out the month was a Western. The month of March finished as a Western. And I think three movies in here now that I truly love. Well, not that I truly love. 2 movies that I truly love. 1 movie that I liked a lot. But True Grit is one that I truly love. It's got a history for me with my father, dear departed father. We were both big fans. We would both quote lines. Fill your hands, you son of a bitch. Bold talk for a one-eyed fat man. And on and on and on. It's a rat for a rat. But I love the movie with John Wayne. I also really liked the movie, the Coen Brothers movie with Jeff Bridges. I say, might be heresy, I say that's a better movie. Now, I like John Wayne as Rooster Cogburn better than Jeff Bridges as Rooster Cogburn. Big fan of Jeff Bridges. I just kind of feel like I've seen him play too many other roles. I can't really picture him as Rooster Cogburn. He did a great job, but I still keep seeing Jeffrey Lebowski and other silly, fun characters. But overall, I'd say that movie's better. Now, reading this book, again, it's different. Reading the book, I like Matty Ross in this book better than either one of those 2 movies. Some of the lines of the first movie with John Wayne, that I feel like I could quote the movie and the quotes are in the book, but they're not always told in the same way. And also there are throwaway lines in the movie that aren't in the book. In the movie, I felt like she could kind of be a real jerk. She was a lot less of a jerk in this book. Rooster Cogburn, every bit the man of grit, every bit the drunkard, every bit the blowhard, every bit one bad dude in this book as he is in the John Wayne film. So I'd say very, very familiar. One of the movies got more right. One of the movies got more right in other parts of the book. You know, some's got this part right, some got that part right. But overall, both movies did a very good job of making this book into a great film. Charles Portis did a great job of making a great book. There was a point in this book that for me, it dragged just a hair. I don't know if it's because I knew the story well enough, and then in the movies, this part is just not part that I love. I don't know, but it felt like it dragged a little bit. I almost found myself wanting to skip a page, but I didn't. But in the end, a great book, couple of great movies. Strongly recommend True Grit. And I don't know. It's kind of like between 4 and 5. I'll say 4.5 if that's allowed. If I've gotta give it a rating, I'll give it a 5. But I would feel more comfortable with just under a 5. 4.5, a little bit better than a 4. But I love this book. I love them movies. I strongly recommend True Grit. It's one if you're not into westerns really, I think it's one you might be able to read and maybe start liking westerns. It's made me want to read more westerns. So there we are with True Grit. And there we are with my March reading wrap up. That's all I got. That's all I got for you. Anyway, thank you for your time. I do truly appreciate it. I can think of no more lies to tell. Say la vie, baby.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to my video. Today